Hey everyone, so I've been building a small game and one of the systems I wanted to design was a custom inventory screen, and since it's a third person game I thought it would be nice to include an animated character portrait, basically a real camera view of the player so you can see your gear and stats update in real time. I actually started by sketching the concept by hand and then I used Nano Banana Pro to help turn it into a fully colorized panel. At this point it's still a rough draft, but along the way I figured out a few interesting techniques and I wanted to share them. So I started with this pencil sketch as a rough layout, and my plan was to load it into an image tool and see if I could turn it into something closer to a finished UI asset. I used a simple prompt, just turn this into a stylized fantasy RPG inventory panel. Now the earlier results looked pretty cool, but they didn't really match the style of the dialogue panel that I was already using in game, so I kind of had to rethink the approach a little bit. To fix the style mismatch, I fed it screenshots of the existing dialogue panel and adjusted the prompt to match the same color palette and framing, and that ended up giving me a much more consistent result. Then I stripped out the static text and item art since those will be populated dynamically in game, and I brought the image into GIMP to clean it up and add some transparency. So what I'm doing here is first I'm going to add an alpha channel, and then I'm going to use the select by color tool to select all the white color in here, and you can see it doesn't quite hit the edges there, so what you can do is choose select and then grow the selection by a few pixels just to get it closer to the edges there. And then once you have all that white selected, you can just hit the delete button, and this will provide some transparency for all the areas where we want to fill in with items and the character portrait and things like that. So now we're over here in Unity, and this is the town scene that I've been working on. And I currently have this heads-up display component in my scene, which has kind of a dialogue panel to speak with the NPCs. And like I said, I wanted to add an inventory panel that sort of matched the look and feel of the existing dialogue panel I already had in place. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the steps I used to get that image that we just created in GIMP into the Unity scene here. So I'm creating a new UI panel object inside of the scene, and this is going to act as our parent object for the other parts to the inventory panel. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to go ahead and go to UI and add an image object. This will be where we put the image that we just created for the inventory panel, so I'm going to name that inventory background. And then down here in the project tray, what I want to do is drag my inventory ping file that I just saved out of GIMP into the project, and you just need to change this to sprite 2D and make the sprite mode single. For some reason by default it's multiple, and then once you have that there, you can select the image object and drag the source image into it. Now I'm trying to match up the width and the height here a little bit to match up with the original image. You can see the resolution down there at the bottom right, so I don't want this to stretch or distort too much, but I also want to get the size looking right inside the actual scene itself. So just kind of playing around with this a little bit, and since I have that dialogue panel there in the background as a reference, I can kind of see how they both look together laid out on screen here. So look pretty similar. You know, I could probably go and adjust the color at some point to make them match a little bit closer, but for now I'm pretty happy with the way that they kind of match up here. So the next thing I'm going to do here is start working on that animated character portrait in the center here. So what I'm doing is I'm actually creating a new render texture, and this is the first time I've kind of played around with these a little bit, but what you can do is basically these are UI elements that you can assign raw images to. You can also assign cameras to. So what I'm doing now is I'm creating a new camera object called portrait camera, and I'm sticking it in as a child of the player object here. So the third person camera right above that there, the hero camera, that's what kind of follows the player around. And this portrait camera, as you can see it, I'm having it kind of face the front part of the character here. So it's going to give a full front view of our character. So it's going to persist in game. It's going to be following him around just like the third person one. You can see there for the output, I'm dragging that render texture that I just created onto that field there. So And then inside of the inventory panel, I want to create a raw image object as well. This is going to be our portrait. So I'm going to adjust the width and the height here a little bit to kind of fill in just behind that portrait area that we have inside of the image. So this will sit just behind it, and I'm going to go ahead and move it, get it centered. So this is kind of like our render area for the character, and then if I drag it up, it'll go right behind that inventory background. And then for the texture there, I'm just going to drag that portrait render texture into it, and you can see right away that it gives us the view of our character that we're looking for. So I did want to zoom in a little bit and get this looking a little bit closer. So this is kind of a nice way if you're trying to get a camera aligned. You can use the in-game editor to just move where you want it to, and then just say align with view on the camera object there. And so at this point I'm going to go ahead and run the scene and just see what this looks like in action. So kind of standing there in the town, and I hit inventory. Sure enough, the character's sitting there animated in the idle pose. So that ended up being pretty straightforward. Now you can see it's live, so as I move around, he's moving inside of the scene, and the background you're seeing there is actually the skybox texture, and well, it looks pretty cool. We'll go ahead and change that to just a plain color later, but I also realized that the view was a little bit pixelated, so I went back to that render texture and adjusted the size. It defaults to something really low, like 256 by 256, so I bumped it up to over 2000, and we'll take another look here and see that looks a lot better, a lot smoother. You don't have any of that pixelation or low quality kind of look to it. So I'm pretty happy with this. Like I said, that background is the skybox, and we'll go ahead and change that actually to just a solid color here. You could choose really whatever you want here. You could have, another scene, another texture, but for simplicity right now, I just went ahead and what I wanted to do was have it kind of match the color and style of the scroll part of the inventory pane here. So I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in on this, and then actually use the eyedropper there to just select kind of a similar color there. So we'll go ahead and run this one more time and take a look and see, and yeah, that's looking pretty good there. So pretty happy with the way it looks, and we're going to kind of keep it like that. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at here is adding those inventory items. So I'm going to go ahead and, just like I did with the first part here, I'm just going to go ahead and add an image object and kind of place it right over those little squares that we have for the different parts of the inventory. So pretty simple, straightforward here, just adding a few image objects, and you can see again, I'm dragging these in the hierarchy. The order in the hierarchy actually affects the Z index. So you want to make sure you have these in the right order, so they're just behind that inventory background. And then I'm going to name them things like armor image and ring image and shield image and stuff like that. These this is a pretty simple inventory panel, but you could imagine you could expand this out if you want to have a bunch of different armor and weapon slots and things like that. So once I have these in place, I'm going to go ahead and add some of the text on the bottom. Now, I know that originally I had this text in the actual image itself, but you don't really want to have any text in an image if you're ever planning on translating your game or your software, because you'd have to get the whole image translated for each language. And in this case, I'm adding these as text objects inside my hierarchy. So if we translate it to Spanish or German or something like that, we can just translate the text values, and we wouldn't have to worry about redoing images and things like that. So I did have some images in place already for, these are kind of like icons for the different weapons and armor that I have in game. So I'm just dragging those into the different image blocks, and then again, just kind of copying those text items over, giving the different labels for the different parts that can be equipped. And once I get those all in place, that is pretty much the final product here. So you can see I have this Now behind the scenes, I didn't show any of the code, but this is kind of wired up to the character's stats, so it'll show you kind of his level and hit point and experience and things like that. So like I said, this is kind of just a rough draft, just a basic concept. I'll probably iterate on this a little bit, but just wanted to share if you find this useful. Hopefully you do, and thanks for hanging out and watching, and we'll see you in the next one.